560 people waiting. I have stirred some stuff up to say the least. Good afternoon, everybody. Wow, what a huge number of people coming to pay a visit. So thank you so much, everyone. I was kind of going through a couple of last second things with my moderators. And I just added one. Wanted to make sure Marco knows that you have been added as a moderator as of now. So in any event, I do believe that I have enough currently in order to handle things. So here we go, and everybody can hear me. So let's start off with the good stuff. Let's start off with that. Obviously, I'm not going to be the angry astronaut unless I get angry, but let's get happy for a moment. Obviously, SpaceX has been completely 100% embraced by NASA as the solution to our exploration of the solar system, at least in terms of manned exploration. It is, the die has been cast completely. NASA is going totally in that direction. Now, in terms of, is SLS going away tomorrow? No, not yet. Because the plan as laid out in yesterday's conference call and everything that's described is using Lunar Starship exclusively to rendezvous with Orion or rendezvous with Lunar Gateway and then bring stuff down. And I'm going to get more into detail in terms of everything that will be involved in accomplishing that in the video that I'll be releasing. It's kind of a 1-2 punch. And I've done this before where I do a live stream and I do a video to back it up. And I was thinking, what do I really want to do the live stream about? What is the topic that I want to have as far as that's concerned? Because just talking about what happened is something that and my take on it is something that I'm going to be doing in the video. So instead, let's come up with kind of a unique topic, something that I believe probably nobody is talking about today, and that's the fact of what does this mean to the future of spaceflight in general to heavy lift providers. Because, one of the things, if let's say Blue Origin won, dear God, no, but let's say they had, or let's say that Dynetics had won, or let's say it was a combination of both of them and they were splitting the money. Then what would have happened as far as that's concerned is, and I'll get to that question about my pictures in a second, then what would have happened is just something in regards to the lunar lander. It would have exclusively been, related to the lunar lander. But to make this solution work for SpaceX and for Artemis to get people on the moon, Starship must work in totality. The whole system has to work. The regular Starship and the Lunar Starship has to function in order for this to be effective. So as a result, NASA has essentially provided $2.9 billion to SpaceX to develop Starship, not just Lunar Starship, to Starship. So what does this mean, to competition? Or will competition even exist anymore? And that's something, sorry, boy, so much I've been going through in the last less than 24 hours. how likely will the other two teams protest the SpaceX award? I think it's very likely, but I don't want to get into why. That's going to be in my video. I have been through that award with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm going to explain. Yeah, the Axiom stuff. I think they're probably pretty happy about it, just because I think they were kind of counting on SpaceX helping them, especially Starship, maybe helping them put up their modules. So that might not be a bad thing. But yeah, essentially the government is hooking up SpaceX to an IV of $2.9 billion to help them with Starship development. What this means is the cost of launching the Starship into orbit once it's functional is going to be a lot less, because SpaceX didn't have to spend this $2.9 billion in order to develop Starship. They've obviously spent a lot of money already, but now they've got, a well of cash to go to. And so that is what's going to give them a big competitive advantage. It's quite a lot of money. It wasn't anything like SLS, obviously, but SLS, as I've said a million times, is a ridiculous waste of cash and inefficient and outdated, etc. And regardless of the amount of money that's been put into it, it's just not going to make it in the long run. And thank you so much. I appreciate the support that was just popped in there. Just so you know, my plan is still to go see SN15, especially now. And I think that I'm going to be crowded with a lot of media people. Yeah, over 1,100 people watching. My God, this is crazy. So yeah, part of what I'm doing still, as always, is trying to raise capital in order to get to CSN 15. There are many ways to do this. It's in the description of most of my videos. Didn't get into this one yet, just because I've had so much going on in terms of trying to get this all taken care of today, because I want to get a lot of stuff released today. So in any event, during the stream, Super Chat is the best way to do it. Or you can go through my PayPal, which is listed on just about any one of my other videos I have. And even in my previous live stream, I have my PayPal there. And I'll also add it immediately after the live stream. I'll put it into the description. So I should have had it all put in here by now, but God, I've been working my tail off for pretty much nonstop on this video that I intend to release shortly thereafter. So thanks very much. NASA should have picked Alpaca as a backup, says, and I'm sorry I didn't see who that was. Thank you, Foom. So Foom coming in as always with a huge donation. Thank you so much. Just to clarify that, yeah, I completely agree. There should have been some kind of backup, but I am glad as hell that NASA did not actually take a backup, because the backup they would have taken, according to their final report, would have been Blue Origin. They regarded Blue Origin as a better solution than the Alpaca. So as a result, if they had gone with two options, if they had had the money of going with two options, they would have gone with Blue Origin. So I'm actually glad that they didn't have the option to take two people. And it was after their decision, after what they said. Thank you, Chris. After what they said in terms of Blue Origin being a superior solution to Alpaca, that's when I really started going in depth into their decision-making criteria and into their rationale. That's what my video is all about. Thanks so much. What is it? Cecil D, I think. I'm sorry, my eyes are bad. Thank you so much for the support. But that, in my opinion, that's something that's going to be covered in the video. It struck me as being really strange that Blue Origin was picked above Alpaca. A few other things. Blue Origin not being very reusable, only two pieces of Blue Origin being, or one piece rather, being reusable, the other two not being reusable. That was not mentioned in their decision. The super tall 10-meter ladder, that very dangerous piece of equipment, that was not mentioned in their decision. That's when I started to really wonder, what was their criteria based on? How thoroughly did they think this through? And so that's kind of what this video is going to be about. It doesn't mean, I think that Starship should definitely be a part of Artemis. I definitely believe in that. But at the same time, the fact that they, rated Blue Origin higher than Alpaca, and Alpaca went from the highest rating in technical, in technical qualities in their initial analysis to the very bottom, to the rock bottom of their analysis. That was weird. That was very strange, and I tried to look for their rationale for that. Let's see. Does this in any way affect how future DARPA and their nuclear engine future awards? I hope so, Richard. I really do. And the reason for that is that I think Blue Origin is dead. Unless Jeff just plugs a ton of money into it to somehow give it life support. I don't see how Blue Origin survives after this. They got no military money. They didn't get this. They haven't gotten anything. They got that tiny little nuclear thermal propulsion award, which is worth a couple $1 million, and they're supporting the Vulcan Centaur with their engines. That's it. And that's sad. And really, I don't see them being viable anymore. And I think that it would be in the interest of all concerned for Jeff to just sell his interests to ULA. And by the way, they are in big trouble too because of this decision. Okay, glad for SpaceX. Could this turn into a Faustian bargain? SpaceX has one vision for the process. NASA comes in and overrides by holding the money over their head, says Andy in Colorado. And yeah, I'm from Colorado myself, by the way. So yeah, I actually think that is a cause for concern. I'll tell you, dry mouth. I've been talking a lot before I even got to this point in making the video I'm working on. So yeah, that is a serious concern because NASA is going to put way more hoops and way more hurdles in front of SpaceX to deliver a product that they regard as safe, as opposed to what SpaceX regards as safe. And yeah, almost $3 billion is a lot of money for development. That's not chump change. And as a result, yeah, that's definitely something that, did they, and by Faustian, of course, did they make a bargain with the devil? Maybe. That's an interesting question. And we'll see. Yeah, they said the alpaca was overweight. That is another interesting point. And that's something else I'm going to bring up in the video in terms of, the alpaca's mass situation and, what that means versus, challenges that other designs had. And why was that challenge so much greater than other challenges? Like I say, that's kind of off topic. So yeah, but what you just mentioned in terms of the Faustian bargain, that's an interesting one. Lunar Starship dock with Orion is going to look funny. Yes, it is. Mothership tiny compared to lander, like the Queen Mary next to a tugboat. Yeah, it's going to be essentially more like a rowboat docking with the Queen Mary and the Queen Mary landing on shore. Very strange indeed. And there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be considered when we're talking about that. But, wait, and once again, that's video stuff, though. That's stuff that I want to deal more with. What does all of this mean in terms of, the future of spaceflight? With almost $3 billion going into develop Starship and all of Starship, because the tankers have to be developed. Therefore, the entire product has to be developed. The entire platform, the entire infrastructure has to be developed if we're going to go back to the moon. If it's not, then we don't go back to the moon. I mean, that's a powerful position to be in for SpaceX, to get Starship developed. And so, with all of this money to develop Starship, they should be able to offer ridiculously low launch costs to providers or rather to customers. That's good for the future of spaceflight. Very bad for competition. Honestly, if I was Rocket Lab, I would be taking a really serious second look at Neutron right now, because, it's entirely possible that Starship can deliver cargoes, even small cargoes, way cheaper than Neutron can with all of this funding behind it. So in any event, there's complications with this. There are some things that may not be as positive as all of this. I think the death knell of Blue Origin, which I really hope comes about, and not because I want these people to lose their jobs. I really don't. I just think they should have new leadership, and that leadership can come from ULA. Or somebody like that. ULA gobbles them up, provides the new leadership, new direction, a new sense of urgency for this for Blue Origin, or what's left of them. That's the direction that I think they should be going in. Will there still only be 2 astronauts on the enormous Starship? Yep. Let me tell you exactly what this award entails, because it's not as comprehensive as one might think. It involves 1 test flight and 1 actual flight. That's it. That's all this award is related to. On top of that, NASA is rolling out a separate competition for a sustainable lander system. Now, why is this not still Starship? Seems to me if they believe in Starship enough to fully fund its development, then why is the sustainable part not automatically going to be Starship? The fact that it isn't kind of makes me wonder, are they going to be looking at this sustainable competition as being, their way of getting a backup? They'll award, the sustainable lander contract to somebody else so that in case there are problems with Starship, then they can have a backup to turn to. That, is something that I can't help but wonder about. But, that's pure speculation. Who knows? One thing that is clear, though, is that the only thing that's involved in this particular award is 1 test flight to prove that it's going to work and 1 actual flight. That's all. And then after that, there is a sustained landing service. However, as Space News pointed out very well, SpaceX is going to have a huge advantage there too, because they're going to have all the money from the HLS contract in order to develop the sustained lander contract. Okay, let's see. Overall, here's some comments from supporters. Overall, I think, says Darth, SpaceX is already launching as much mass to orbit as the rest of the planet combined. This contract probably won't change that. Or at Starship without NASA is going to be another massive change in the market. I certainly hope that's the case. Starship is not the end of the rocketry paradigm. The HLS may make it take longer to get to the rocket after Starship, but there's no law of physics that requires it to be a SpaceX product. That's very true. What it does, however, require is that a competitor come out and develop a new system with their own money, which is, of course, what SpaceX did as well. But they're going to have a big head start now with a powerful, reusable product that didn't cost them nearly as much to develop as it was originally going to cost them. They're taking, deducting $3 billion minimum off the cost, by the way. And by the way, if it ends up being a little bit more, NASA's going to pay it, because without Lunar Starship, we don't go back to the moon. So they're in a powerful position here, very powerful. Game on SN15 is much bigger stage than yesterday. Yes, indeed, that is a huge stage, and there's probably going to be lots of media watching it. Another thing, of course, to keep in mind: if we have any more crashes, the media is going to report NASA's lunar lander explodes, not SpaceX or SpaceX, NASA, whatever. NASA is now going to be tied to every explosion. How much is that going to change things? Now, who knows? Maybe they've got the landing totally down now and there's never going to be another crash. But if there is, of course, SpaceX tends to ignore the media. NASA and their congressional mentors, their masters in Congress, they don't ignore the media at all. They're very subject to it. So that's another change to things in a huge way. Sure, it makes me happy because it was getting annoying to seeing the lobbying to the FCC about Starlink, suggesting that they were cutting off competition before it could get off the ground, when once again they were not showing any good faith in being in the game. The company clearly has something rotten in it. Blue Origin is what we're talking about here, like the other company where people have to pee in bottles. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Starlander glitch. Starlink plus NASA money should set SpaceX up for Starship plus Mars colony plus Moon colony. Yep, I agree. This is a game changer. This makes Mars, a very, very doable thing in the. I don't know how far in the future. That depends on Starship development, but still, it changes everything. I'm really thrilled about that. Very thrilled. What I just can't help but wonder is, what is it going to mean? Because let's face it, Vulcan got 60% of the military contracts based on, what the military saw as the, positive aspects of that rocket. Now, with Starship in the game 5 years later, unless ULA comes out with something really fast, they are going to be on the receiving end of a pretty raw deal. And the ULA has got to be responding to that in a huge way. So we'll see how that develops, obviously. I would say that they've got right now, Blue Origin, I think it's screwed. ULA has the most to lose because of this, and that depends on how you feel about ULA in that regard. Dynetics will survive just fine. I agree with that. Johnny Spacer just pointed that out. Dynetics is actually a company that's mostly focused on military and other things. They're going to be just fine. This is not something that was really, a massive deal to them, aside from the fact that, they wanted to be part of they wanted to handle landing on the moon. But nevertheless, yeah, they'll certainly survive this because they're not. Spaceflight is not a big part of what they do, or not the biggest part anyway. SpaceX has also gained a partner with a different sort of influence in the government. It's also interested in timely progress on Starship. Yes, it is. Moving Starship along quickly is going to make a lot of difference. Competition can exist when other players come in and meet the table stakes of having a business plan beyond the taxpayer dollar. True. It's just going to take a lot in order to be able to do it now. Is the playing field still level is kind of what I'm asking. It kind of is. I mean, $3 billion isn't an insane amount of money, but at the same time, There's also a huge incentive to move Starship development forward as fast as possible because we don't go to the moon until this is done. So this is really going to change things dramatically for Starship development in terms of how rapidly it moves forward, unless the NASA puts all kinds of barriers in front of NASA puts all kinds of barriers in front of SpaceX in the process of this development. Reading the NASA paper, Blue Origin broke some rules in requiring advance payment, says Tartan, Texas. Interesting, and thus I think they showed they have no business plan other than the government business, which I think is how it may disqualify any vendor, given that they don't want to be the only customer again. Yeah, actually, that's true. And Dynetics, to set them apart, did not have the advance payment kind of requirement. Once again, because they're a big military contractor, they've got the money to not have to require that. A lot going on in that regard. Boy, lively, let me tell you, lively to say the least. Under the terms of the contract, can they change the lander radically, or do they have to land with the lunar version of Starship? No, they can't change it. Not any significant changes anyway. It pretty much has to be done as described in order. And that was actually part of the decision that was made, is they looked over it and then asked SpaceX rather, to rebid based on the contract that they had put forward, the solution that they had put forward, without really making any substantial changes to it. They had to come down with the price. And of course, SpaceX was able to come down with the price because they're developing it anyway. So they were in a uniquely powerful position on matter of price anyway to win this. They couldn't lose really when it came to price. The question is, of course, is if NASA was kind of forced into a decision to make, that they had to make this decision on price because of Congress, did they make the decision that they really wanted to make? They didn't, actually. I can answer that right away. They didn't. But at the same time, what they wanted was Blue Origin to be the other option, which is something I certainly didn't want. And I think that anybody who knows a lot about the topic probably didn't want it either. How will this contract impact Starlink? Hugely. It will change Starlink forever. Just going back to the chat, I know I've missed a lot of you. I'm very sorry about that. But it will impact Starlink in a massive way, because in order to make Lunar Starship work, you have to make the whole infrastructure work. Starship will have to be able to deliver large cargoes, whether that cargo be fuel or the cargo be something else like Starlink, up into orbit. I think that Starlink is going to be completed in very short order as a result of this contract. I think that that's going to make a big deal. SpaceX did not come down with the price, just the payment schedule. Okay, gotcha. Thank you for the clarification. They were kind of vague in the description as to what the rebid was all about. The one thing they were clear about, though, is that they considered doing a rebid with Blue Origin and felt that they couldn't do it in good faith because the Blue Origin cost was so much higher than Starship, and so NASA could not in good faith match or get anywhere near to the price that NASA was looking for. So that's why no rebid was requested from Blue Origin. Once again, I can't complain. I can't complain. Yeah, no amount of money will save BO, says Victor. Yeah, I agree. I think they're flawed in many ways, and it's again another reason why I am happy that a two-vendor solution was not chosen. What I am disappointed about is that the two-vendor system was not chosen with Dynetics included. We're putting all of our eggs into one basket here. Really are. We're putting the future of going back to the moon in one basket. Every reason to believe that Starship's going to be able to do it. Some question as to how long it's going to take, but to develop this bleeding edge technology, and the life support super heavy, so many boxes need to be ticked off. But nevertheless, it's I'm positive, I'm confident that they will be able to do it eventually. I have a great deal of certainty as far as that's concerned. But it would have been nice to have a Dynetics backup. That would have been my ideal. But you can't always get what you want. So let's go back down and have a look at some of the other comments here. Hold on, let me just say, how will this impact current Starship development speed? It's going to increase it, I think, because Starship is going to be under a lot of pressure to get this situation complete, get Lunar Starship and the entire infrastructure that supports it. That's going to have to be completed far more quickly, very quickly anyway, in order to get anywhere close to the 2024 deadline or somewhere along those lines. Moon base by the end of the decade? Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think it'll happen. Okay. ULA is probably waiting for Blue Origin to get strapped for cash, then buy them at fire sale prices, says Starliner Glitch. Yeah, I'd say that's likely. I'd say that's very likely. What's the flight plan then? Launch in Crew Dragon? No, that's not the flight plan. Meet Lunar Starship in lunar orbit? Yes. Wondering why NASA's talking about only 2 astronauts on the moon. Yeah, that's a big question for me too. But though it focuses on the fact that there is only one flight involved here, one test flight and one actual flight. That is all this contract covers. So that's one thing to keep in mind. There is another contest coming, another competition for sustainable landing services as opposed to human landing services, although the sustained landing services will also involve humans. Why NASA has decided to separate this into 2 categories, I can't begin to imagine. But maybe it's because they're trying to find an innovative way of getting a backup, to get a backup lander in there just under a different category. Hard to say. Do we now see starships being built at the Cape with the extra resources? Maybe so. Boca Chica has a lot set up there. So that is hard to say. But I think, in my opinion, it's probably still going to be Boca Chica, at least for a while. Okay, let's see here. Worried about the Raptors, says Steve-O. Yeah. Me too. They're not a mature engine yet. All the time that they're having to be swapped out should be ample proof of that. And the times that they failed during landing attempts, etc. That should be ample proof of that the Raptors still have a ways to go. So there's a lot of boxes to be checked off on Starship in order to make this whole thing work. But at the same time, they've got the best and brightest minds at SpaceX and NASA, plus a lot of funding to make this happen. This is something they didn't have day before yesterday. So this, like I say, this is a huge game changer, And for good or bad, it puts SpaceX in the driver's seat in a lot of respects. The 2 categories are so they can get additional funding from Congress or use discretionary funds. Yeah, the Congress has already expressed, some anyway, there have expressed extreme displeasure with this decision. That could represent a problem because discretionary funds can't fund all of Artemis. Congress, if they wanted to, could pull the plug on the whole Artemis project unless, NASA plays ball. I'm not saying that they're going to go to those sorts of extremes, that they're going to be that angry about all this, But who knows? That's another big question as to what's going to happen with all of this. Right now, the money that it was awarded off of this contract cannot be changed because it was discretionary funds. NASA gets to do what they want to with that. But for future funding of Artemis in general, that's another question. So we'll see. We'll see on that. Two, because it's purely a test pilot deal like Demo 2. Yeah, that is true. The one thing that's different, of course, about this and Demo 2 is that there aren't two finalists. Starliner, of course, is a piece of junk, but nevertheless, it was a second finalist. It was a backup. And that's not what's happening here. If I was on Lunar Starship and going down to the surface, I'd like somebody with a long rope to stay on board. Wouldn't want to be stuck on that if that elevator doesn't work, says Twicker's Bernie. Yeah, that was brought up actually. Putting the egress points 30 meters above the lunar surface was identified as a weakness in the design. However, it was said to be mitigated by the advantages represented by it. So it's that's one of a number of things that they talked about, but I'm going into the video. I'm going into detail on all of the providers, all of the rationale. That's something I'll be dealing with later. The new Raptors, you're right. There definitely is going to be, some stuff in terms of the new Raptors. We'll see how they work. But anything new usually needs time to be developed and to be tweaked and to be brought to a level of maturity. Now, we'll see. All I can say is we'll see. It's a big question mark. Apparently, NASA is embracing SpaceX's development methodology, mass produce, test often, fail often, tweak, repeat. Yep, that is true, Malachi. That's exactly what they're doing. They have completely embraced this new way of doing things, at least under current leadership. That's another thing to keep in mind. That's what makes this whole thing so strange, is the administrator and the deputy administrator of NASA have not yet taken their jobs, and this decision was made anyway. Was it made with their approval, or was it shoved in under the door at the last second, under the carpet, before the current leadership, was kicked out? That's another interesting question that I'd like to have answered personally. I really have no idea. Is this a NASA tactic to get more funding? Yeah, we can go with the national team, but we need another $4 billion, says Twicker's Bernie. It could be, and God, I hope it's not. God, I hope that they're not going to ask for more money for a national team. Oh, Lord, what a ripoff that's going to be if that's the case. Elevators are indeed simple, but as anybody who as any elevator technician can tell you, they break down. They run into problems. But that's, the elevator is not anything that really concerns me about Starship. To me, that's kind of a minor thing. There are other things, but I'm going to bring it up in the video, not right now. NASA saving money via the SpaceX partnership was the whole point of commercial resupplying crew. True. It really does prove those programs work if they don't hand out bad contracts to entities like Boeing. Yep, that's a very good point, Patrick. SpaceX was definitely the only good option for NASA. Given the money that they had available, I agree with you. Given the money that they had at their disposal, I agree with you. However, does that make it a good solution? Does that make it the best solution for going to the moon? I don't know. I can't say that I have a solid answer on that one. Do I think that Starship can do it? Yes, I think that SpaceX and Lunar Starship will find a way to do it. So that's my opinion on that. Okay, do I think Lunar Starship will have only vacuum Raptors? It should. I mean, that's all that it's going to be using. The new administrator had much influence on the source selection results. Source selection process, flawed as it is, was designed by a family of statutes to prevent that sort of thing. Yeah, that's true, Darth. And once again, I'm not going to talk much about this. I went through that. I've gone through this whole thing a lot of times, at least the technical side of it. There's, the rationales for the decision. All that's going to be in the video. Thanks, God, almost 2,000 viewers, folks. If you like what you see, please hit like, please hit subscribe. I would be delighted. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for tuning in. It'd be nice to get to 700 likes. Can we get there? Then again, you might not like what you're hearing. I do tend to say what I think, regardless of what anybody else thinks. So yeah. So that's just kind of the way I am when it comes to that. All right, let's see. The negatives of having SpaceX with the contract versus the positives. Joe, I'm going to have to give that to you in the video. That's very complicated and something that I intend to cover in the video, which, by the way, is pretty close to being done. Why don't SpaceX, NASA just launch a bunch of starships to create a temporary lunar colony? Personalize each starship for this specific job. Yeah, that could be done. Of course, you need to know where to set up the colony. Right now, we really don't know. We don't know where we want to set up a colony, and it's important to identify the best places where the most amount of resources are available, that sort of thing. But yeah, Starship definitely is a way of doing it, a way of establishing, colonies. It gets rid of the reusable aspect of Lunar Starship. I think Lunar Starship can be reused. You can set it up like a lunar cycler, as I suggested recently. And there's lots of other ways to make use of it. But the reusability of Lunar Starship is one of its strong points. One of the things that NASA regarded as being one of the biggest and most positive aspects of it. So I kind of think that what they have in mind is for Lunar Starship to bring the equipment necessary to build that base. But first, they need to choose the right place for a base. And Lunar Starship's going to be handling that too, for good or bad. Interesting NSF post. It's abundantly clear that not only NASA believe in Starship, they also appear so comfortable in dealing with SpaceX. Yep, they're a known entity. NASA understands their management, their engineering, quality control, and other bits that go into making an organization like NASA comfortable. What a change from, say, 10 years ago. Yep. The other thing is that Starship delivers a platform for NASA, not just a lunar lander with a massive payload and habitation space, but also the same-ish platform for LEO, same-ish platform for Mars. Yep, that's true too. A capability that must make NASA dream about the possibilities and other proposals could not match. Why? Okay, so yeah, those are all very good points. I still look upon that as an advantage for the future. I look upon that as an advantage towards the comprehensive exploration of the solar system, of setting up bases on the moon, not exploring the moon. I still think the alpaca was a better solution for that. But nevertheless, doesn't matter what I think. The decision's made. Although, once again, this sustained landing system thing that they're doing, what is that all about? Why did they think that that was necessary? Why isn't Starship just the automatic choice for that? That's a really interesting question, and very few details about that. We're going to get the details in the months ahead, but why was this separate contract created? Very interesting stuff. And yes, when the NASA crew visited the Starship launch site in South Texas not that long ago, including some people that I personally met at the Green Run, there was a lot behind that, obviously. A lot more behind it than just a photo opportunity. A lot that I didn't recognize. I'll freely admit it. I did not even come close to recognizing just how big that was. So, in any event, will SpaceX and Artemis be a complement or a competitor with getting to Mars? 2024 also has a transfer window. Yeah. I don't know about that. That's another good question, Darth. Does this mean that Starship needs to go to the moon first? Is that where all the emphasis is going to be now? Is moon to Mars? Has this now been completely embraced by SpaceX? Because if they start doing stuff on going to Mars, then NASA, before they complete their lunar ambitions, then NASA says, hey, what's up? We need to get to the moon. We need to go back to the moon. Come on, SpaceX. We gave you almost $3 billion. Now you need to, play ball the way we want you to. Again, This is something, there's any deal like this is a two-edged sword. It always is. I think that overall it's a benefit for SpaceX in a huge way. But anything like this is a two-edged sword. Okay, there's a whole lot of things when it comes down to it. Yeah. Pretty hypocritical. I have to admit, when I mentioned BO, and actually this is something that I bring up in the video, criticizing the lander for the height and yet not the elevator. An elevator is a lot safer than a ladder, but still, it's not just me that made that didn't make that distinction, rather. NASA didn't even make that distinction. NASA didn't even bring up the ladder for Blue Origin, and they made a passing reference to the height of Starship. Hard to say. But yeah, it's the height of Starship is something that definitely needs to be taken into account. And as I said before, elevators do break down. Any elevator technician will tell you that. So anyway, that's all I've got to say as far as that's concerned. Blue Origin needs a new visionary leader. Yes, they do indeed. I agree with that, Mr. Pete. Boy, I'm way back. I'm just looking through some here. The separate contract is a backdoor for the SpaceX contract for leverage. Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Could be very possible. The Raptors, Johnny Spacer, are not designed to use hydrogen instead of methane. I think that would require a lot of re-engineering, and I don't think it's built into the contract. That would have been a huge violation of the government procurement process to allow SpaceX to make massive changes to their design in order to get a better chance of winning the contract. They're going with Methalox for good or bad, and I'm covering the pluses and minuses of doing that in the video. So in any event, wow, thank you guys. Boy, I'm getting a lot of support on all this. Thank you for all of these super chats. Jeez, you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for that. Okay. A rope ladder could be deployed if the elevator didn't work. I don't know if that's a joke or not, Johnny. I'd hate going up and down a rope ladder in an environmental suit. Wow, that would be tough. That would be tough. I would say probably lowering a basket down, kind of like from a helicopter or something, and bringing the astronauts up that way. That might be more of a rescue helicopter kind of scenario. That might be a little bit better. Those rocket engines 2/3 of the way up, won't they need fuel tanks above them? Won't they impinge on the available cargo space and mass? Yeah, Twickers, there's a lot of unanswered questions about Lunar Starship. But once again, I'm going to bring up a lot of that when we're kind of impinging on the video. I know I keep going back to that, but one thing I will say is that no matter where they put the engines, you need a lot of thrust in order to decelerate that much mass. You just need a lot of thrust. The debris plume that's going to be created by that, I don't care what engines they use, is going to be substantial. And all of the potential issues that may create, but that's, once again, that's going to be in the video, so I don't want to go too far into that. All right, let's see. But yeah, it's, regardless of how big the engines are, you still need to decelerate 100 tons of mass going down to the moon. That's a lot different than decelerating 3 or 4 tons. It's just a very, very big difference. Okay, why doesn't SpaceX, NASA just launch a bunch of Starships? Oh wait, I'm sorry, I went over that. I read about Dynetics issues with negative mass and delta V miscalculations. Yeah, I have read that, and it is, like I say, I am actually looking for hopefully some comments on that, because it's tough for me to address that directly. There were references made to it. However, I do believe that you could take some drawbacks from the other 2 landers and put them in there too as unresolved issues. Just replace the words and say that that's an unresolved issue. But regardless of the mass and that sort of thing, well, I need to get answers on that. You can either shed mass or add more propulsion. Those, and with a small lander like that, it doesn't take a lot of extra propulsion to make up for a small amount of mass. The proposal did say that those issues had been identified by Dynetics. So I don't know. Like I say, that's video stuff. I know I keep falling back on that. But at the same time, okay, let's see here. Thanks so much, guys. Okay, SLS still in the game. Wine, or are we just sending Max up to 3 in space? Well, that's another consideration. There is a contractual obligation. A lot of congressional money has gone into a lot of SLS rockets. That money has already been allocated and spent. I really don't see how that can be avoided. SLS will be around for at least as long as the obligation is the money that has been allocated to it. So SLS, for good or evil, is going to be hanging around for a little while. But once again, I still think this goes in conjunction with NASA's ideal to some degree. Having a abort system, from the ground up, is something that they want to have. Now, granted, you can do that with Crew Dragon as well, but you didn't have that when they spent the money. So the money's been spent, just like the money's been spent on Lunar Starship now. So I think we're stuck with SLS for a little while, but not very long. And the writing is on the wall. The writing is definitely on the wall. SLS will go away and be completely replaced by Starship to one degree or another. That's just going to happen. Okay, let's see. Okay, in regards to SLS, governments don't believe in the sunk cost fallacy. Yeah, they're going to probably stick with it. Okay, why doesn't NASA use a modified Dragon capsule with a service module located in the unpressurized cargo section of Dragon on a man-rated Falcon Heavy instead of SLS and Orion? Well, you have to get the Falcon Heavy man-rated first. That could take time, and the emphasis now is on Starship. That's where the money and the emphasis is, not on getting Falcon Heavy man-rated. Elon has said that he's not going to man-rate Falcon Heavy, and he really has no reason to at this point. Falcon Heavy, as a matter of fact, will be completely outdated and no longer necessary within a few years if everything goes right for Starship. Okay, does this signal NASA's possible intention to ditch Orion long-term and switch to Starship completely? Yeah, maybe. Once again, there's a lot of obligations made with the Orion. A number of them have already been purchased. And also the ESA service modules have already been purchased. We have international obligations as far as that's concerned. So all of that, is still very much in place. So that's going to be complicate matters. Once again, though, this doesn't matter to SpaceX that much. It really doesn't. It means that they are going to develop Starship faster and with less of their own money than they thought in the past, which is one of the whole reasons why I created this video. Is that a good thing? Is that a good thing for SpaceX to essentially get their system fast-tracked to crush any competition? Because it could happen. It could very well happen. So I don't know. Like I say, this is probably got competitors of SpaceX up at night. Those who are not supported by government subsidies, like some of the European competitors and that sort of thing. Kind of hard to say. Why build Artemis when Starship can just land on the moon? The reason you build Artemis, or why Artemis exists, is simply because for one thing, the current plan is not for Starship to land on the moon or even to take off with astronauts. Now you can take off with astronauts, transfer them, from the, we've talked about this a million times, from Crew Dragon, and then go that way. That's certainly a way of handling it, and maybe that's the new Artemis at some point. But there are some drawbacks with doing it this way, of sending Starship from low Earth orbit all the way to the moon and all the way back to low Earth orbit. I'm going to get into that, during the video. And this isn't just to let you know, this isn't me making stuff up. This is rocket scientists who have calculated a lot of the issues behind this. But nevertheless, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying that there are some challenges involved with that don't exist with SLS. So, we'll see as far as that's concerned. Super Heavy is a little dangerous. Yeah, as far as we know, we don't know what's going to happen with Super Heavy. We haven't so much as done a static fire with it yet. So that's another big question mark. Lots of question marks with this decision. Once again, that's what makes it so exciting and so terrifying. NASA has taken this huge leap of faith against all expectations. They've taken a huge leap of faith and entrusted SpaceX with the future of human spaceflight. If Lunar Starship does the job, they go back to the moon. If it doesn't, then they don't go back to the moon at all. Or unless they've got an ace up their sleeve with some other project, they don't go back at all. This is a huge risk that they're taking, especially with all the money that has been plowed into Artemis already. This is a big roll of the dice, 7-11 in Vegas. I'll tell you, it's a big one. But at the same time, SpaceX definitely has some great people working for them, and now they've got NASA with some amazing minds backing them up there too. So I've got some very, very strong confidence that this is going to work. When it's going to work is the question, but I think it will work. Why wasn't Alpaca selected? It's perfect, says number 6. I do tend to agree with that. The drawbacks that were mentioned is that miscalculations were made with the mass and that sort of thing, and that Dynetics, although Dynetics had identified these things and was doing something to correct it, they did not have any confidence that they were going to be able to fix these issues in time. Maybe not. But at the same time, that's not showing a lot of confidence in Dynetics. These folks are heavily involved in the defense of the United States. A lot of the contracts that they've been engaged in is responsible for keeping the population of this country safe from foreign aggressors. If they can't deliver those kinds of contracts, but if they can deliver those sorts of contracts, then why can't they find a solution to whatever drawbacks existed with Alpaca? Don't know. But once again, that is something that I don't even want to get too much into right now. I'll be getting into it soon enough. I do like the Dynetics lander. See why NASA chose only SpaceX with Dynetics. You can bring down materials to build a base. Starship is pretty much a base by itself. Well, there's a lot of advantages to it. On the other side of things, however, you don't have to refuel the Alpaca 8 to 10 times to land on the moon and then bring the Lunar Starship back to low Earth orbit in order to refuel it and use it again. Yeah, folks, it's going to take that many times, and that's not me making stuff up. But again, that's the video, so we'll get to that. So there's definitely okay. There's some super chats I need to get to apparently. I'm being reminded about this. And I am running out of time, so I don't want to let the super chats go by. JR Moore, thank you so much for the fund. Foom, geez, you come through for me so much. Thank you so much for that. Wow, you do so much to support this channel all the time. Definitely, as I said, oh my Lord, Richard Kerr. Unreal. Why do I think that Elon does not publicly support nuclear thermal or electric? Both seem to add bonuses to Mars. Nuclear thermal for speed and nuclear electrical co-development for Mars reactors. He doesn't publicly speak against, but no public activism for either. I'll tell you something, Richard. I think that he's going to be embracing it now, given that NASA is so heavily pushing towards it, and Starship is now the solution to get humans to Mars. Nuclear thermal and Starship are going to have to somehow become one. I don't know how that's going to be done, but it's got to be done. NASA is very much behind that. Once again, geez, so many people tuning in, over 1,100 likes. This is unprecedented. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Foom, geez, you just do so much to prop up this channel. Thank you so much, all that you do to make this happen. Once again, I am just making sure, since I'm running out of time, to hit the super chats. I've missed so many of you. Dear God, there have been so many comments. I'm so sorry. There's just so many things that I can answer. But anyway, okay, let's see here. Hold on. So, Dragon Tribe, what do I think would be the best way to diversify surface access? That's a tough question too. I don't know yet. It's there. My head is swimming right now with this announcement. There's going to be a lot of unanswered questions. I wish I had a more solid answer for you, but I just don't on that one. Okay, let's see. There's some more stuff. Chinkums. Okay, the redundant airlocks doubling as shelters. Yes, I've mentioned this in the video. Redundant elevators scored points with NASA. Yep, in the procurement document. I see the change to the final descent engine size in the new rendering. No, I didn't. All I can say is, regardless of the size of the engine, you're going to have to run that thing and burn a lot of propellant and a lot of thrust to stop 100 tons plus the cargo. I'm sorry, you can't change the laws of physics. You just can't. You can use different, clever ways of using different engines to try to create a different solution. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to take, a lot of thrust and a lot of continuous thrust on the surface of the moon that only has 1/6 gravity in order to slow down this enormous amount of mass. That is going to create a debris plume. It just is. And it's going to create a debris plume that's substantially larger than the other two competitors. That's all there is to it. But at the same time, does this mean that it's a game that's a showstopper? Obviously not. Obviously not. It's a big deal. Or rather, that the NASA's already taken that into account, clearly. Still filing through super chats. Thank you so much. Crazy Dave, thank you so much. I too am quite crazy. Crazy actually to say a lot of the stuff that I say. Crazy to come up with the topics that I do, because I'll tell you, I'm rolling the dice myself every time I do this. Okay, let's see here. Here's Sovereign Soul. All this makes Dear Moon with the Lunar Starship the way to go. Yep, I agree. And I've been talking about that on my channel for quite some time. Dear Moon with I released a video on that just, a couple of videos ago. So yeah, Dear Moon plus Lunar Starship is the way that that's going to happen. And it's going to happen, I think, close to on schedule. Vitali, thank you very much. And thanks for coming back with your rubles. Spasiba Balshoy. And I am finally through the super chats. How the hell did Blue Origin mess up so bad, says Sigmund? Well, that's just them. I don't know what to say. That's what happens when you design a lunar lander in Kerbal Space Program. There's a lot of things that get damaged when you do that. Okay, what does a post-Artemis NASA do with Lunar Starship? Does it go commercial? I don't know if NASA goes commercial, maybe. But nevertheless, yeah, I do think that it goes, that post-Artemis NASA goes to Mars with Starship, without question. Without question. Phil Rogan, SpaceX are going to need some kind of seismic survey of the landing site. It's going to need to be solid rock, and it's going to make one huge dust storm. Yes, it is. And the person who brought this up first was Robert Zubrin. He has estimated the amount of thrust that it's going to take, regardless of the engines, to decelerate Starship and also to make it take off, and the kind of crater that that's going to make on the surface of the moon. And, you know, when you do all that, what kind of landing surface are you going to have afterwards? And once again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but still, it's something to consider. But we're going to see. We're going to see what happens when you do that, because we have yet to do so. NASA engineers are smart. Yes, indeed they are. I bet there have been some serious calculator slapping going on. SpaceX crashed 4 Starships and gets $3 billion. I hope Elon does a conference soon. Any ideas when? Nope, I really don't. Right now, NASA seems to be focused on going back to ISS again with the next Crew Dragon. That seems to be where the emphasis is. How about a nuclear tug made to dock on the rear of a Starship? Yep, that could allow Starship to carry more fuel to Mars, which would allow landing without the flip and burn method. That's a great idea, Johnny. It would be more convenient to land the lunar Starship horizontally, just reorient the landing engines. Yeah, you know, that's been talked about a lot. Very interesting stuff. A lunar space elevator. Yes, I've talked a lot about that. Definitely. How will this affect, oh boy, more of these. How will this affect Dear Moon? I think Dear Moon will happen faster, definitely. Jinkums, thanks. Well, you're quite welcome, Jinkums. Looks like they're using a ring of 20 plus bipropellant hot RCS for the final touchdown instead of developing new mini Raptors. Yeah, that's still a lot of engines. That's a hell of a lot of engines. So it's going to create a plume, especially on a planet with, or a body rather, celestial body with 1/6 gravity. It's going to be more problematic. There's no way around that. But at the same time, NASA feels that it's worth the risk. Do you think that they will use the heavy lift capabilities of the Starship for the first mission? No, Frederick, I do not. I honestly don't think they can take 100 tons. I think it's going to be very challenging to take 100 tons. And I explain why this is the case in the video. And by the way, it's backed up by more than just me. But I think that it's going to be less than 100 tons, substantially less, in order to make it doable, at least to get the lunar Starship all the way back to LEO. That's going to be required. So we'll see how that goes. Once again, guys, wow, so many of you tuning in. Do I think this will affect the Mars date? It might. Yeah. Once again, it's, NASA just gave a ton of money to SpaceX to get to the moon. So if they start putting, any emphasis on going to Mars, that could change some things. That could get NASA worked up and start to put pressure on SpaceX to get back focused on the moon. We'll see. I don't know. I really don't know. Why would a ladder be such a deal in such low gravity? Because ladders are tough to go up and down no matter what the gravity is. And there were a number of incidents with astronauts just walking around on the moon where falling over and cracking their faceplate would have been instantly fatal. Falling off a ladder and cracking your faceplate on the way down would also be instantly fatal and could definitely happen in the process. And the Apollo astronauts got really bugged by the ladder they had to navigate. And that's nothing compared to the Blue Origin ladder. So that's why, and it's not just me. There's a lot of people who've been commenting on this. So I am mystified as to why that wasn't even made a big issue. But once again, one of the strengths of Starship that was mentioned in the proposal is its reusability. In order to be reused, it needs to get back to low Earth orbit where it can be refueled, because in situ methane does not exist on the moon, at least as far as we know, nor does the carbon necessary to create methane with the Sabatier method. So as a result, or Sabatier, whatever you want to call it. So those are some major things that are going to need to be overcome, with the future of Lunar Starship and with this entire process. But there's going to be some very good minds working on it. So I have a lot of confidence. Okay, guys, it is past the time. Thank God SpaceX won. It would be kind of disappointing if Blue Origin won. I agree completely. I think I'm going to end on that high note. Guys, I really, really do appreciate everything, all of you folks tuning in. My God, this is by far the biggest video live stream that I have ever had. I both appreciate it, and I'm deeply humbled that this many people actually care about my opinion. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like, please subscribe, and now more than ever, until Starship gets to orbit, gets to the moon, gets human beings there and back safely, until all of these massive events happen for the future of manned spaceflight, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.